Are you tired of playing the same old boring Steam games?
I've already played all these games.
Then we've got what you're looking for.
Wow, a wheel.
Introducing the Wheel of Steam Tag Randomization. Simply spin the wheel once to find your first tag, then spin the wheel again to find the second tag. And voila, your new dream game awaits. Buy your Wheel of Steam Tag Randomization for only $19.99. Wheel of Steam Tag Randomization is not responsible for eyes falling out, hair falling out, eyes bleeding, ears bleeding, eyes falling out of your ears, hair falling out of your bleeding eyes. I bought the wheel. In case you didn't catch it from the intro, I will explain what's happening. I put together a list of 14 different tags, trying to mix it up between things like genres or general feel of a game. We'll spin the wheel twice, then do a blank search on Steam with only those two tags active, then try to find something that looks interesting or maybe obscure or at the very least fits those themes. And without further ado, let's spin the wheel. And for our first spin, hand drawn. Okay, I kind of like that tag. And spin number 2. A hand drawn vampire game. That's probably got something. I just wanted to check. I wanted to take a quick little look just to be sure, and there are 129 results for hand-drawn vampire games, one of which I actually already own, which is interesting, but I'm not going to pick that one. But that just shows me that this video at least might be a success. The first game I ended up going with was Deckbuilding, the self-proclaimed first bedtime Vania game in history. Hard to believe nobody's scooped that one up yet. Deckbuilding is a precision platforming puzzle game. Emphasis on puzzle, less emphasis on precision. This is pretty similar to games like Celeste, where you've got just one screen and need to make it to the exit, but this game is a little different because instead of going from point A to point B, your goal is to turn off all of the lights so that you can go to bed, hence the whole bedtime Vania thing. Even though I don't really see any Metroidvania in this game's blood. Reminder, this is a vampire game. That was a joke. Things start off pretty slow with you just kind of turning off lights and moving level to level, but they start introducing new mechanics. Things like different colored torches where when you touch them you get a mid-air dash. And if you're saying, that's a little bit too much like Celeste, I ask you, does Celeste have ghosts? Yeah, I guess, actually yeah, Celeste does have ghosts. I kind of forgot about that. Regardless, the game does a pretty good job at introducing new obstacles and keeping things fresh, but never making you feel like you don't know what to do. There was never a point where things stacked on top of each other enough for me not to really know what was supposed to be happening. It's honestly kind of a shame that this game is marketing itself as a precision platformer because I think that's going to disappoint fans specifically of the precision platforming genre. There were very few instances where I died because of the platforming. It was more so because of the puzzles and I had to restart the level because I did something in the wrong order. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying when you market the game as a precision platformer and you have a level where it's just a straight line and you can't fall off, I think some people might get the wrong idea. I think just calling it a platformer might fare a little bit better in people's eyes. But the main reason I bring this up is because of some praise. It's kind of disappointing that this is not a precision platformer because it controls really well. This shell of a game, but with levels designed more for platforming than for puzzles, I think would be a dream. And in addition to one other thing that I'll touch on later, I think I could see this game doing really well. Deckbuilding is a game that doesn't waste your time, both in the actual gameplay and in terms of length. I have to shout out the quality of life features. There is a button mapped specifically for you to restart the level, which is huge because it's like instant when it happens. I could see a developer with less foresight putting the reset button in the pause menu, which would have worked just fine, but would have gotten frustrating really quickly with how often you have to restart, so I appreciate the developers for doing what they did. In terms of game length, it's looking like people were taking about 2 hours to beat it, which is not too bad, but I wouldn't have minded a little bit more, especially like these auto-scroller levels where you're running through and you're trying to escape from this giant wall of spikes. Why isn't this my house? Why did I have a giant wall of spikes added? And that, unfortunately, will lead me into my biggest complaint with this game, which is the lack of character or charm that I could see this game having. Visually, I love this game. We rolled hand-drawn on the wheel, so I was kind of expecting something great, but I was very happy with how this game looked. And there's even a cute little opening cutscene that's animated. The humor is there. It looks really great. So I was setting my expectations really high. And then nothing. You run into like one other character throughout the rest of the game, and that character only shows up and talks to you like one other time. Other than that, it is pretty much just platforming. And I recognize that I'm complaining about playing a game in a video where I talk about playing games, but I want something to latch onto. The story of the game is that you are a vampire and you want to go to sleep, and that's kind of all that they give you. Why do I want to go to bed so badly? Where is everybody else in the castle? Why are there ghosts, and why don't they want to see me get sleepy? Even just like a short little lore explanation for why certain enemies are showing up when they do could go a long way in making things feel cohesive. Like, I can't imagine it would be that hard to add something like, you know, a little necromancer character, and he's like, hey cousin, sorry, you know, I was trying to call Pizza Hut to order a pizza, but instead I called the spirits of the damned, so now they're trying to keep the lights on, because if we turn them off, they're gonna get sent away. You know, something to go off of. Now you've got a memorable character, another cute design, and a lore explanation as to why there are ghosts and why they're keeping the lights on. It's not that much and it's not necessary, but it's something. And I bring this up as a complaint because I can tell that there are good character designers on the team. I mean, look at our main character. I would absolutely buy a plush of him. And I do just need to reiterate that these are things that would make the game better for me. Of course, the game is good on its own. I enjoyed my time playing it, and just because it didn't blow me away doesn't mean that it's a bad game or that, you know, they need to go in there and change whatever. For me, I had fun with what it was, but I think I would rather keep my eye on what the developer does next. Wow, what an incredible or bad first game. I'm not really sure. I haven't played any of them yet. I'm doing all the wheel stuff right now. Let's spin for game number 2. 1980s, okay, that's a theme, so I'm hoping that we get it paired up with a genre. For spin number 2. Walking sim. There's got to be a lot of 1980s walking simulators out there. Isn't Firewatch supposed to be set in like the 70s or the 80s, and that's like one of the most famous walking sims? I'm pretty sure. All right, it looks like there are 179 results for 1980s walking simulators. Honestly, I kind of thought that there would be more. I expected that to be kind of a home run type thing. 1980s nostalgia is kind of big right now, and it has been big for a little bit, so I guess I thought that there would be more. Doesn't matter how many of these games there are, I found the winner for me. Killer Frequency is a game that I am surprised has not been on my radar before, because this is right up my alley. It almost feels stupid that I found a game that I like so much because of the Steam tag wheel of randomization or whatever it's called. In Killer Frequency, you play as a once hugely famous radio DJ that now has to do his show in the middle of the night in a teeny tiny town. So tiny, in fact, that when a serial killer comes and kills one of the 2 sheriffs in town, now all of the 911 dispatch calls are being routed to your radio station instead of the 911 headquarters, because you're basically the only one in town that really knows how to work a phone in that way. This is a really great setup for a walking simulator horror game because it allows you to have a lot of different horror scenarios, but you never have to see them. I really don't want to spoil much with this game because I recommend it and I think you should grab it, but the basic gameplay loop is that somebody calls in and they're being chased by the killer, so you have to use stuff in the office to figure out the best way to coach them to safety. In that sense, it's kind of like there are a bunch of 80s horror movies happening, but instead of you being the protagonist of them, you're just on the phone listening to them happen, if that makes sense. A lot of people say that the best kind of horror is the one that you make up in your mind, you know, the fear of the unknown, and Killer Frequency uses this a lot to its advantage. And that is in large part due to its sound design. I don't typically care or talk about sound design in games because it's not usually the focal point, but in a game where it's a walking simulator with limited actual gameplay and you're on the phone most of the time, you kind of have to nail the whole sound design thing, and for the most part I think they did. Our 2 main characters that you hear through the entire game are both voiced really well, and every time that somebody calls in that is getting chased by the killer, there's just enough urgency and fear in their voice where you're scared and want to help them, but not getting annoyed. You know, they're not just screaming and freaking out in the phone while you're trying to do something. And of course, some of the sounds whenever you, let's say, fail a puzzle to save somebody are also pretty effective. Yeah, if you don't properly guide somebody to safety, you're effectively guiding them into the hands of a serial killer, which is a less desirable outcome, I would say. Still, it's really nice that you can fail, and it makes those stakes feel really, really high, because you don't just hit the reset button. You have to sit there and listen to, you know. The first time somebody didn't utilize my instructions to their full potential and I had to hear it, it was a bit much. I felt really bad. I kind of wish that my characters would have also felt that bad, you know, a little bit more shaken, but they move on pretty quick. I understand why they had to do that for the game, but it is funny, the whiplash of like, oh no, I can't believe that just happened. Well, looks like we're getting another caller. Really, the light tone works. This is not a super scary horror game, and there is a lot of humor to break things up whenever there is a tense moment. There's a certain caller that calls in a couple different times, and it made me laugh every single time, and the advertisement for the Harvest Festival was so funny to me for some reason.
We got it all out on Giblet Field. We got the Little Miss Harvest Pageant, Princess Harvest Pageant, Harvest Queen Pageant, cotton candy, corn dogs, cornhole, corn on the cob, crokinole, country music, can jam, jams, jellies, jamborees, juggling, roller rickies, roller disco lessons, praying.
The way that the voice actor says praying gets me every single time. I don't know why. Don't go into this expecting a horrifying, like Resident Evil 7 type run away from the killer, narrowly avoiding death over and over again, because that's not what this is. Some people won't like that, but for me, the almost episodic nature of each of these calls makes it really easy to either like sit down and play for 2 hours straight, or play a little bit, stop, and then come back and not feel like I'm going to be missing really important story beats. Spoiler alert, this is going to be my highest rated game on the list, and honestly just one that I rate highly in general. Definitely a highlight of the games that I beat this year. That's all I'm gonna say on it. If you're interested in it, go grab it, and if you're not sure, I'm pretty sure it looks like it goes on sale a lot. I got it for like $8, and I feel like that was good. So if you don't know, wait till it goes on sale, wishlist it, see what happens. Game number 3, I'm personally hoping to get the dog tag because I have no idea what that could entail. Spin number 1. Minimalist, okay. Now I'm just looking and I'm trying to think what would pair badly with Minimalist. I guess probably FMV, right? Full motion video and Minimalist don't seem like they could even coexist, but we're gonna let the wheel decide. FMV, that was real. No way that was real. Nobody's gonna believe me, but I promise that was real. Just from an initial look, Minimalist FMV games have 29 total results, and to be honest, none of them look like they are minimal or FMV. I think this may be a case of put every single tag on there and hope that somebody finds your game, so we'll see how that one goes. When I was writing the script for this portion, I was trying to figure out what I would need to start with in this discussion, and I think, and this is gonna make some of you guys feel old, I think I need to explain what FMV even is. FMV is short for full motion video. See, back in the olden days of gaming, the 90s, we didn't have, ways to make cutscenes or the budget to make something that you can actually tell what's going on. No, instead, they had to rely on cardboard sets and horribly compressed videos to get the point across. When I put FMV on the wheel, I was thinking more so FMV games, but technically FMV is not a genre, it's just something that a game can have. What I should have put on the wheel was interactive movie or interactive film or whatever the equivalent to that would be on Steam. Night Trap is probably the most famous example of what I had in mind, but unfortunately that's not what I put. All of that is to say that FMV really limited my options, and putting the Minimalist tag along with it made this nearly impossible to even find a game. Nearly. Because through the depths of games that were farming Steam tags for anybody to click on their games, I did find one that fit my description. ! Shakabula asterisk. I was the most intrigued with this game out of any of the other games on the list, and I'm sure from looking at these screenshots you can probably feel the same way as me. The Steam page discusses the genre as follows: a creepy FMV plus 2D art atmosphere, steer and click plus Metroidvania navigation system, JRPG plus twin stick bullet hell. So, there's a little something for everyone. Still, I had no idea what to expect with this one, other than that I knew it was going to be weird, which I was right on. A Shakabula is allegedly a South African urban legend, though I think it might have been made up just for this game because I could not find any information about it online. If anybody is aware or knows anything about this, and I'm completely wrong on calling the game out and saying it's made up, let me know, but I could not find anything when I looked it up other than this game. Before I get too far into actually talking about the game, I have to say I did not get very far into actually playing the game, maybe like, I don't know, 20 total minutes of actual playtime, because there are a ton of bugs that make it almost impossible, or at least extremely frustrating, to keep moving forward. I bring this up just because I know that there is probably a lot more that is in the game that I didn't get to experience, so I'm just talking about what I was able to experience. Shakabula is split up into two very distinct gameplay styles. Exploring the world is where our FMV comes in, and I think the best way to describe it is like on rails, kind of. With it being FMV, it's not really like a 3D environment, so all you can do is move forward and move backwards because that's what they filmed. It can make things a little bit weird, but creepy in like a good way. You also have this special power as you move throughout a room where you have this cone of vision that sees certain items that can help you progress. In the little bit that I played, this was always just a brilliantly labeled key where it would be like security gate key, and then you walk a couple steps forward and then it's like security gate. It's like, okay, I think I know how to put 2 and 2 together here. This is a very interesting style, but unfortunately this game is held back by the aforementioned bugs and also the control scheme, which I'll get to in a second. I pretty consistently ran into this glitch where there would just be a blank text box that would pop up and it would soft lock me. I couldn't interact with anything else. All that I could do was just completely hard reset the game. And without any actual saves that I can manually do while playing this game, it made things not that ideal. But somehow, even worse than these glitches is the control scheme. This game only supports controller, no keyboard, for a reason that I'll get to in a little bit, but the way that they set up the controller controls is just really odd. It's going to be hard to explain without people actually playing it, but like I said, you're on rails in different rooms because they have limited things that they can film. So if you need to turn left at an intersection or turn right or move forward, you have these pop-ups that say, do you want to turn left, go straight, or turn right? Now, in my head, I'm thinking, all right, well, I've been using the left control stick to move forward and backwards, so if it's asking me if I want to go forward, left, or right, I'm going to use the left control stick. That doesn't do anything. Instead, things are mapped to the face buttons, only there's no indicator for which face button corresponds with which direction you're going. I thought, okay, well, the directions that we're going are north, south, east, and west, and the buttons are set up in a similar way, so, pressing the top button should move you forward, pressing the right button should move you right? Not right. Literally, pressing the right button does not move you to the right. I'm still not entirely sure what the correct way to do this is, but I think depending on the orientation of your character, if you're facing forward or backward, you have to turn your controller 90 degrees, either left or right, and then that would correspond with the north, south, east, and west. It's all very confusing and really does not seem like it should have been done that way. I'm not sure if there was some sort of glitch or if it was just a mistake when making the game or what, but it's really not intuitive and makes the game so much harder to play. Now, the reason that you can't use a keyboard and instead have to use a controller is because the other half of this game is like an Undertale style turn-based action RPG. I actually quite like the idea of these fights. It's a bullet hell twin stick shooter where you actually get to interact when an enemy is attacking you or you're attacking the enemy. It just depends on who has the advantage at that point. That's the reason why you have to use a controller, because it's a twin stick shooter and keyboards do not have twin sticks. It's a cool system because it's not quite as sluggish as a normal RPG like Persona, where you just press A over and over again where you find a weakness, or even something like Undertale where you're not able to damage the enemy, you're just avoiding damage for yourself. It's a really, really cool idea that I like a lot, and I skipped it every single time that I came across it. You don't actually get XP from doing any of these fights. The only thing you can get is these white leaves that the game never tells you what they're used for, so I just never bothered with it. And I think that's my main takeaway from this game, that the developer is extremely ambitious and has a lot of really cool ideas, but unfortunately, maybe just isn't at the point where those can be implemented super well. In the bit that I played, I saw little glimpses of story, and I wanted to know what was happening with that, but the game was just fighting against me to move forward. Same with the combat. It was fun to play, but no reason to do it, so why would I waste my time on it? I actually went and checked out the developer's YouTube channel, and it looks like they're working on some other games. My eye was caught by this game called Baller Town. I'm sure you can tell why. But this is the same thing as Shakabula, right? You've got this super weird, janky overworld, and then you go in and have a different style of gameplay. This is like a mix between pool and mini golf, kind of. I can't really tell exactly because it's only like a short little trailer, but I love this idea. I know I've been fairly negative while I'm reviewing this game, but like I still want more of this kind of stuff. I almost wrote in the script that I would take games like this over soulless games made by large corporations, but to be completely honest, for me, that's not true. I'd still rather play a game that actually functions and is made by a large soulless corporation, as opposed to a game that I can't really do anything with that's made by one guy. Luckily, that is a hypothetical. We live in a world where I can play those soulless games and wait for this developer to really hone in their skills and make something great. I have faith. For game number 4, or maybe it'll be game number 3 if this one doesn't work out, but the next game, spin 1. We got roguelike, one of my favorite genres. And to pair with it, we have it's stuck. Dog. Roguelike Dog game. There are 50 results for roguelike dog games, which is shocking or maybe not shocking. I'm not really sure. It's in second place in terms of how many games there are for it, but maybe there's something good in there. The game I went with for these tags was Golden Record Retriever, and I don't really know how I feel about this game. I think I like it. I'm gonna do my best to explain this game's gameplay and mechanics. It's gonna be pretty tough. Not even the game is really that great at explaining it without you actually playing it. You have a 2x4 grid and you need to make certain colored patterns that the game throws at you. You have sets of dice that have different probabilities and sets of colors. So one dice might have all sides with the color red, whereas another dice might have 2 sides that have blue and 4 sides that have green, something along those lines. You put your dice into one of those 8 squares, and whatever color it lands on is the color it puts there, and then you have to build whatever pattern it's telling you to put on there. It's fairly simple in concept, but much more complicated when you're actually playing. The dice are where the deck building and roguelike portions come along. As you're going through a run, you can recruit different dice that come in and can either help or hurt your gameplay. You can try to have a deck that's very stacked towards one color and just hope that you get patterns based off of that, or you can try to spread everything out and keep it averaged out. It's really up to you how you want to build things. Even still, you can plan as much as you want, but it's still going to come down to the roll of the dice, which I think is going to turn a lot of people off. At least that's the main complaint that I'm seeing from all of the reviews, which is completely understandable. I understand where that frustration is coming from because, the randomness should be coming from the deck building portions, which different dice you get, not specifically in the gameplay. I think some of the reviews are being a bit too overdramatic. They say that it is relying solely on RNG, which it's not. As you're going through a run, you get different upgrades and different dice that can have some strategy in there, right? Like I got one where if you throw it on the board, it will push the other dice to the left or to the right. So you're moving that color throughout the board. There is a little bit of strategy of when you can throw that dice out, what dice you should throw before it, what area you should throw it out, stuff like that. I mean, even with that though, it still is fairly RNG dependent. So if you go into the game not expecting that, probably not gonna be happy. I knew what I was getting into and I was fine with it. Not in love, but I understood what to expect. Now, one thing that I did not like was the theming / setting of this game. It reminded me a lot of Rick and Morty, and not in a good way. You probably know what I'm talking about. They'll have a weird alien, he's super quirky, and his name is Glorply, and it's oh, look how random we are. It's so weird that this is happening, right guys? I felt like this shell of a game would work a lot better in medieval times, almost with a Dungeons and Dragons type coat of paint. When I think of dice games, I think of old times as opposed to modern space, weird alien sci-fi stuff. And each of the runs are seen as a different sort of episode or campaign, which again makes me think of D&D. Almost everything that you do in the game is represented by an action. Even just making a certain pattern out of colors is oh, well, you walk up to this person and stab them with a knife. To me, that is just so clearly Dungeons and Dragons, medieval time stuff. It's so weird that the developers were I can tell from this, it's gonna be a space game. And I know that this is definitely a personal preference thing. I prefer fantasy over sci-fi, but to me, while playing I could only picture fighting against like a goblin and a wizard as opposed to some alien named Bleeblorb or something. I think I need to play the game more to fully know if I like it or not, but I think mixed reviews at 57% is way too low for this. I kind of look at this in the same way that I look at Shakabula. It's like, yeah, this may not have worked really how you thought it would or what other people would have, but you're making something completely new. You don't really have anything else to go off of, and for that, I commend it. This particular game might not work for a lot of people, but I think it is still valuable in the fact that it's going to give the developers knowledge of what worked, what didn't work, what people like, and what people don't like. It's still a learning mechanism, even if not a great game. And for our final game, let's see our first tag. Deck Builder, okay. And spin number 2 determines if this is gonna be good or bad or not. Deck Builder Precision Platformer? I don't even know if that would exist. Well, my friends, there are a cool 10 results for a precision platformer deck builder. I can't say that I'm shocked, but I feel like I might be more shocked once we actually see what game we end up having to go with. You know how I said that there were 10 different options for this tag? Well, when you factor out the game bundles and games that are not out yet, we're left with 2 whole games. The $20 mixed review game or the $5 game that just came out. Putting my money on Tower of Nod. When I first looked at this game, I was admittedly very scared. Portrait mode gameplay? Pixel art? This is gonna be a cheap mobile game port, isn't it? And surprisingly no, the Subway Surfers aspect ratio is because this is a Tetris platforming game. Precision platforming? Absolutely. Deck building? If you consider getting new Tetris pieces to platform on as deck building, then yes, for sure. Tower of Nod is probably exactly what you're picturing in your head when I say Tetris platformer. Instead of trying to fill a row with pieces to clear it, you're instead trying to build yourself a staircase to get to the top of the level. On paper, this sounds kind of easy, but in practice, trust me, it is really not. The game is pretty rough, and you have to do a lot of planning with what piece is falling down next, where you've positioned yourself in relation to these pieces, and of course where the obstacles are. If this was literally just Tetris pieces that you control and have to platform off of, I probably would have gone with the golf game, but the deck building portion of things really does keep this game fresh and interesting. After each level, you have the ability to pick a new piece that you can add to your blocks. These could be things like just a differently shaped piece. Some of them might help you, like they'll, have you jump higher, and some of them also might hurt you. At first, I didn't really know what the point of choosing a block that would hurt you would even be, but then I realized you not only have to look at the thing that the block does, but also the shape of the block. Singular pieces really aren't that great, but a lot of the times those are the ones that have the buff of an extra piece of armor, basically letting you take another hit. Whereas the T pieces are really good as a shape, but a lot of those will have some sort of debuff, like having lava or something. With that in mind, I feel like this would have a really good speedrun potential, watching somebody play this at a high level. I'm sorry that you have to watch me play this because I'm really, really bad at it. But trust me, there is a good mix of strategy and RNG that keeps this game feeling fresh every time that you do start a new level. I do kind of wish that there was more variety in the obstacles though, like in the early levels, which I played a lot because again, I'm bad. I got really tired of having to deal with this guy that just dumps lava on your head. It's a little annoying to have to deal with over and over again. I would have liked a little bit more. I didn't have the chance to try them out, but it looks like there are some other characters that you can unlock which have different starting blocks. So I think if you get kind of tired of playing as one character, you can freshen things up by having different blocks that you start off with. I think there's enough potential in each run that this would be really interesting for people that are into this genre. I am not. I don't like games where there are time limits and I have to be quick on my feet, but I know that there are a lot of people out there that do like that. So if you do like that, maybe check it out. I personally see the vision and I see this potentially being, a nice hit for a niche little indie crowd. I just know I am unfortunately not going to be part of that. That was quite an interesting mix of games. I was surprised that I actually found as much as I did that I liked. It kind of reminds me of this
best place to come for your news at 8 o'clock. And the only spot to get news from 8 o'clock at 8 o'clock.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm here live in front of the old Steam Tag Wheel of Randomization factory where it's just been determined that the owners were actually devil cultists. Due to previously unreleased court documents, we now have information which shows that these wheels were used in devilish possessions as well as sacrifices. If you or someone you know is currently in possession of a Steam Tag Wheel of Randomization, we encourage that you smash, burn, or otherwise destroy the wheel, as we're currently unsure what sort of supernatural abilities this wheel has.
That's so stupid.